What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Johnny Truth. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the illusion of choice. Now, as you can see, the media has been consolidated from down to 6 giants, and those giants are GE, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, and CBS. Now, if you ever wondered why every time you turn on the TV, you see the same old bullshit being pushed down your throat, whether it be consumption or political propaganda, it's just every day, all day long, is being force-fed to us. And as you can see, there's one media exec to every 850,000 people. That means 232 execs control the information of 277 million Americans. Their total revenue is $259.9 billion. So after I realized all that, I say, let's go on here and see who owns the media. And what's the first thing that pops up when I type in who owns the U.S. media? By 2000, 6 corporations had ownership of most media, and today 5 dominate the industry. Time Warner, Disney, Murdoch's News Corporation, Bertelsmann of Germany, and Viacom. So those 5 tycoons, billionaires, scroll down a little bit and what does it say? These 15 billionaires own the news media companies. This is Forbes.com. I'm sure we're all familiar with Forbes, right? So let's see who they have on their list. Oh, it says right here that several other billionaires, including Comcast CEO and Liberty Media chairman, own or control cable TV networks that are powerful but not primarily political. So first up on the list, we have Michael Bloomberg, the richest billionaire in the media business. Forbes has his net worth at $45.7 billion. Now this is the richest guy in media, and he happens to be Jewish, as you can see right here on his autobiography part of it. They have his net worth at $53.4 billion. So is it 45 or 53? Who knows? He's just rich as shit, and he controls a lot of what goes on TV. So next up, we got Rupert Murdoch, former CEO of 21st Century Fox, who's also a billionaire tycoon. You can see a little bit of information about him here. But the thing that stuck out to me the most was down here where they have his quotes. And you see, he's worth $11.9 billion. But you can see down here in his quotes, he says the buck stops with the guy who cashes, or with the guy who signs the checks. So what does that tell you about his attitude? Nobody is above him, right? He's like king shit in his world. So next we have Donald and Samuel Newhouse. They inherited Advanced Publications, a privately held media company that controls a plethora of magazines and news channels. So when we go on here to see what's going on with these guys and who they are and what they're about, I mean, this is all interesting information to find out how all these guys have political ties, how they all pretty much know each other. You'll see here, American media mogul Donald Newhouse has a net worth of $11.8 billion. He's a Syracuse University dropout and co-owner. The media and company includes magazines like The New Yorker, Vogue, and GQ, Florida cable and internet company Bright House Networks, and the hugely popular website Reddit. You kind of see how the web gets wove together. So next up, we have the Cox family. Cox Enterprises, owned by the billionaire Cox family, counts the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and a number of other daily papers Among its many media investments, James Cox, the company founder and grandfather of current chairman Jim Kennedy, bought his first newspaper, the Daytona, Ohio Evening News, in 1898. The Cox Media Group division today owns the Journal-Constitution and 6 other daily newspapers, more than a dozen non-daily publications, 14 broadcast television stations, and 1 local cable channel, and 59 radio stations. And that's a lot for one family to own. And to be a billionaire. What's this say? December 4th, 2013, News Corp, NASDAQ, NWS, NWSA, ASX, NWS, NWSLV announced today the appointment of Jim Kennedy as Chief Communications Officer, responsible for the company's global corporate communications and media relations innovatives and strategy. Mr. Kennedy, who served in the Clinton White House, joins News Corp from Sony Corporation of America, where he currently serves as Senior Vice President for Strategic Communications. So these guys are the Cox family, Jim Kennedy, whatever his name is. They're tied in with the Clintons. They're also tied in with Sony. I mean, you can just see the web. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. As you dig down the hole, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And these 15 guys, I mean, just imagine, birds of a feather flock together, right? So I got to assume that these 15 guys just sit around and laugh and make wagers on how many people they can get to abide by their stupid rules and consume their products and cheers their cups at another billion made. I mean, you see where these 6 corporations rake in $259.9 billion a year. Now, why do we have people starving if we have people with that much money? That's the real question. Instead, they push garbage down our throat to make us spend more money. And we just keep consuming it and making them richer. And for what reason, I can't understand. But maybe that's something you can sit down and ask yourself. But anyways, moving right along. Next up on the list, Jeff Bezos, the Washington Post. Yeah, these things are a little slow when you're trying to record and edit and do a movie all at the same time. So anyway, Jeff Bezos, Amazon founder, bought the Washington Post for $250 million in 2013. Since the beginning, his run for President Trump has accused Bezos of using the Post to get tax breaks for Amazon and spending reports after Trump. Bezos denied the allegations at a tech conference in the Washington Post. The Post reporters also defended themselves, saying the paper has covered Amazon's tax problems and that the Post editorial board stance on taxing online retailers hasn't changed since Bezos bought the paper. So this guy already, in just the 4 years that he's owned this company, he's being accused of tax fraud. Imagine that, he's a billionaire and he's being accused of tax fraud. That ain't even as deep as it goes, though. You can go on to this other website. It's an NBC website. 8 things you need to know about Jeff Bezos. And what does it say? Number 1, he's the world's 19th richest man, according to Forbes. Bezos' net worth is a staggering $25.2 billion. That means he bought the Washington Post for less than 1% of his fortune. He was also named by the magazine as the 27th most powerful person in the world, falling in the same list as President Obama, Pope Benedict, and Russia's Vladimir Putin. So they really hype him up in this paper. One of his buddies, I'm sure, owns MSNBC, who wrote this article about him. The 19th richest man, according to Forbes. and he controls what we see and what we hear and what we watch on TV. And I'm sure a lot of people weren't even aware that 6 corporations own 90% of TV and radio. Like, when I first heard that, I was astonished. But next up on the list, John Henry, who owns the Boston Globe, billionaire Red Sox owner, purchased the Globe in 2013. Henry agreed to purchase the Globe just days after Bezos acquired the Washington Post. So there you go. These two are definitely buddies. There's no getting around that. Days after Bezos acquires the Post, he buys the Boston Globe. Why would you even have to say you don't plan to influence anything? If you get a paper, that just sounds defensive. I'm going to buy this paper, but I don't plan to influence anything that goes in this paper. I mean, just think about how that sounds. That's the logic, behind this shit. If you stop and break it down, I mean, if you use your mental, life ain't complicated. It's usually simple. So anyways, next up on our list, we have Sheldon Adelson, Las Vegas casino billionaire who secretly bought the Las Vegas Review-Journal. The newspaper's own reporting outed the billionaire buyer who reportedly arranged the $140 million deal through his son-in-law. Since then, there have been reports of Adelson influencing coverage of himself at a newspaper that in the past was often critical of the billionaire. So as you can see, once he buys the newspaper, then all of a sudden they're running good stories about him. But prior to him buying that newspaper company, they had nothing good to say about him. Does that ring a bell? The media news has covered casino magnate Sheldon Adelson's address to the Israel Council, a recently formed organization of Israelis who live in the United States, many of whom have truthfully become Israeli Americans. When asked what to do about the land and what to do about the Arabs, Adelson said, "I don't think the Bible says anything about democracy. God talked about all the good things in life. He didn't talk about Israel remaining as a democratic state. Israel isn't going to be a democratic state. So what?" That's pretty brazen and arrogant. That's brazen and arrogant. But hey, he's a billionaire and now he owns newspapers and tells us what to read. So I guess you can be brazen and arrogant when you have that much power, huh? And again, we're talking about 15 of the most powerful people in the world, and they own 90% of the media that you see and listen to. Not only that, they own the companies that manufacture the goods that they sell you. They own the drug companies that manufacture the pharmaceuticals that they push on TV, the flu shots, every commercial on TV. Get your flu shot. Get your flu shot now. Kroger's. They're offering to donate a meal for every person that gets a flu shot. Then we got this guy, Joe Mansueto. Morningstar CEO, Joe Mansueto. I mean, that says enough. The name of his company is Morningstar. Look at the guy's eyes. I mean, this is a picture of him. He looks like like he's soulless. Look at the smirk on his face. Like, hi, I'm raping you for billions and there's nothing you can do about it. And you're too dumb to even know it's me. A native of Monster, Indiana, is widely regarded as one of the most influential figures in investment research business. The Chicago-based founder and CEO of Morningstar. Next up, we have Mortimer Zuckerman, real estate billionaire, the owner of both U.S. News and World Report and the New York Daily News. He's the chief editor of the U.S. News and World Report, which he bought. I mean, you can just see how this all fits together, right? These guys are all friends. They all know each other. They all attend the same conferences. They all have the same things. But you look here, and his involvement in the Jewish organizations in Israel. It says George Bush appointed Zuckerman to serve on the honorary delegation to accompany him to Jerusalem for the celebration of the 60th anniversary of the State of Israel in May 2008. So he's a Bush friend, huh? It says between 01 and 03, he was the chairman against the votes of the people. They didn't want him, but they didn't have a choice because George Bush said this is the guy here. So it's crazy how that works. But on to the next family, the Barbie family. He's the son of the heir and businessman Edward Bud Barbie and his wife Ruth Virginia Denier. Barbie is one of the heirs to the VF Corporation retail fortune that includes North Face, the Timberland Company, and Lee Jeans. Fewer than a dozen family members own 20% of the corporation, which has a $12 billion in annual revenues. It was founded by his great-grandfather and taken public in '51 by his grandfather. So that just tells you how powerful these guys are. I mean, they're heirs to business revenues of riches. I guess is the way you could put it, for lack of a better term. I don't know. I'm just babbling on. But next up on the list, old Stanley Hubbard, media mogul, CEO of Hubbard Broadcasting, 13 TV stations, a number of ABC and NBC News affiliates in the Midwest, 48 radio stations, and now he's on Podcast One. Next up, we have Patrick Soon-Shiong, the LA doctor and pharmaceutical billionaire. So he's tied in with the pharmaceutical company and he controls what goes on TV. Do you really need to say much more about that guy? He went bankrupt, and then 4 years later, he emerged from bankruptcy after being bought by Oaktree, Capital Management, Angelo, Gordon and Company, and JP Morgan and Chase. So that tells you the billionaires that he's tied in with. Carlos Slim Helu. They published an article last Friday criticizing the power that billionaires wield over media companies. One ultra-wealthy media investor not mentioned in the story, Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim Helu. I wonder why they didn't mention him and why he has an alias for a middle name. And he's a Mexican billionaire. But next up we have Warren Buffett. I'm sure a lot of us know who Warren Buffett is. He's the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, and he's invested in a number of small newspapers and owns about 70 dailies today. He acquired 63 daily newspapers and weeklies in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Alabama from Media General for $142 million. So he has influence in a lot of states. He has a lot of political ties. Obviously, he's a pretty powerful individual with a lot to gain. And he tells you on TV what to think, what to buy, how to act. And look what we have here. It's not surprising to see Warren Buffett on this list. He becomes a major invisible spokesman for Democratic candidates in recent years, especially Clinton and President Barack Obama. Money magazine notes that the Oracle of Omaha has donated more than $6,000 to Clinton's campaigns over the past 15 years. So we have an avid Democratic supporter here. And last but not least, Viktor Vekselberg, a Russian billionaire, investment arm Columbus Nova technology partner, bought a minority stake in Guacar in January 2016 for an undisclosed amount. Now, this is a Russian billionaire who owns U.S. media and newspapers. That in itself right there should ring a bell. But when I go on to see, about him and what he's got going on and who he is, the first article I pull up, the very first thing says that he's being investigated for what was the word that they used? I can't remember the word that they used, but we'll see it here in a second. It's getting ready to pop up. Obviously, my internet's running a little slow, but he's definitely not a good guy. Russian law enforcement officers investigating bribery allegations on Monday detained 2 senior executives who work for billionaire Viktor Vekselberg. State investigators said they had opened a criminal case into allegations that executives in firms controlled by Vekselberg had bribed regional officers. Armed state security agents and ski masks searched the central Moscow offices of Renona Group, which manages Vekselberg's assets. So you can just see what this guy's got going on. I mean, he's being raided by the SWAT. But I mean, as you can see,